Recorded statement number 02DX. Dr. Dragus Drox, Head of Xenobiology and Founder, Project H.U.M.A.N. Classification level, Red Tetragon. It is with a very, cautious approach that we have finally taken down the extraterrestrial entity, said Dr. Dragus Drox, as the overhead light buzzed, casting flickers across his bioluminescent jelly-like scales. Two of his 4 hands fidgeted across the panel, tapping rapidly. Part irritation, part dread. Both were chewing him from the inside out. The only reason he wasn't dead was because no one died of nervousness. He looked up. The Committee of War Sciences watched him from across the display. He barely resisted the urge to frown and turn red, because those bureaucratic fools didn't even consider installing proper holographic displays. He was stuck looking at and working with simple flat screens. On one of such screens, a collection of generals, xenotechnicians, and bioweapons developers, all of them disturbingly eager, stared at him with emotions varying from distressed to excited to bored. Dr. Drox sighed, the brilliant blue of his skin drooping to a faint white. It's clearly sentient, expresses use of a language, very guttural, inefficient, but undeniably complex. We've managed to decipher some parts of said language, though a lot of words are still gibberish, to be honest. Basic study of mannerisms and body language clearly tells us that the beast is quite angry. He shuffled through a digital file, displaying a 3D scan of the entity's physiology, which once again looked absolutely pathetic on the flat screens. Muscle density is off the charts. Some special parts are even stronger than armor alloy. Ligaments are like tension coils. Bones fuse with naturally occurring calcium structures, completely alien to our genomic understanding. He flicked a second screen to life. Footage played. The entity, specimen H.U.M.A.N, stood in the center of a containment ring, bruised but conscious. Wearing some fabrics that covered most of the body, but on the exposed skin, one could see strange organic wounds. Some purple and bruised, and other red and leaking a curious dark crimson. Every few minutes or so, it would try to hit a different part of the energy shields of the cell he was in. It took unimaginable amounts of analgesics to take him down, Drox continued. Enough to paralyze a Cleaxian mountain worm. That too after the loss of, by the last count, 42 fully armed soldiers and at least 67 civilians. And I remind you, esteemed committee, the entity was unarmed at the time. Most of our weaponry was rather ineffective, especially the shock rifles. All nearly useless. Whatever you want to call him, just shrugged off our shock rifles. The same resistance allowed him to counter shock collars too, so now we've switched to extreme dosage of various drugs to keep him restrained. General Clack clicked his mandibles, unimpressed. Perhaps your drugs are ineffective. Surely, had it been tranquilized properly. It's escaped containment 4 times in the last 24 hours, Drox snapped. His voice rang across the chamber. 4 times! While drugged and restrained, with heavy alloy cuffs bolted to a wall. He didn't even use doors, it just smashed through the walls. I had to dose it so heavily on hypercalotraining it had liquefied the spinal column of a lesser being. He turned back to the recorded footage. On screen, the entity looked up. Eyes bright, blue, filled with hidden and restrained fury and intelligence. It bared its teeth. It had done the same thing quite often, though the expressions were wildly different. Usually this teeth-baring was done when exposed to extreme conditions of pain and such, but it was just idle right now. It had no reason to do it. And now, Drox said coldly, you morons want to turn him into a weapon. The room fell silent. Another disappointment, thought Dr. Drox. Not even proper environmental sound systems were installed. General Clax hissed. "I understand your hesitations, Doctor, but we have reports it destroyed an armored transport using only a metal rod. I'd like to know more and be informed. The Council wants a weapon. We'll have it, whether you like it or not." Drox nodded slowly. "Of course. I was merely expressing my concerns over the absolute idiocy of you people. However, you are correct. He destroyed an APC, that too with a metal rod from the wreckage of the object it crashed in, which, I might add, we still don't understand. It had engines that used controlled explosions. Primitive yet effective. This creature, it survived orbital re-entry in what was effectively a tin can." "Species designation?" asked High Archon Zilra, her voice a reedy chime. "No clue," said Drox. "We couldn't decode the language from its wreckage. It's labeled only with 3 letters. H.U.M. That too in a very, very strange way. Everything else burned. No genetic records matched our archives." "So we label it?" the Archon asked. Drox nodded. "We've called the project H.U.M.A.N. Hostile unit meant for annihilating nemesis. And make no mistake, this thing is a nemesis itself. A natural-born killer. Efficient. Merciless. Resilient beyond comprehension. And it kept pointing to itself and saying that word when we first observed it." The Archon said, "So we are calling this thing human?" The Doctor nodded, and a quiet chittering rippled around the room. Clax leaned forward, which looked straight up awkward without a hologram. "And yet, it is just one. Imagine if there are more. A dozen. An army." Drox froze. The thought had gnawed at him since the moment he saw it climb out of the fire like a rage incarnate. "That's what terrifies me," he whispered. "This might not even be their strongest. It's clearly a mistake that he's here, and most of the technology and what we're assuming are weapons from the pod are next to outright beyond what we know. Doctor, we'd like to see real-time footage of the human. With the amount of risk posed by him, we can't let anything slip." "Of course, General. I'll do it immediately." "Is there a problem, Doctor?" I can't raise the containment room via comms. The doors are responding to my commands, but no one is answering." "Drox, what's going on?" I don't know." There were a series of loud hissing bangs, clearly from shock rifles from the hallway. What followed was the screaming of Zendaxian soldiers. The guttural roar of the entity shook the Doctor to the core. The council was a mess of yells and barks, but Drox only heard General Clax. "Damn it, cousin! Get out of there now!" But the Doctor was frozen in place. He couldn't move, partially because he knew that the door was flimsy, and that he would tear through before he could get to safety anyways. As if on cue, the door opened. He entered the room. Even more blooded now, more in the bioluminescent blood of Drox's kin and co-workers rather than his own, and in one hand he held a jagged metal piece, poised to kill. In the other, it held a universal translator device prototype, a courtesy of the Doctor himself. It didn't really work, but apparently the universe works in mysterious ways. For the first time, he spoke, in that strange, gravelly tongue. 2 words. Round 2. End of statement. Security breach ongoing. Note: Project H.U.M.A.N. deemed highly volatile. Containment protocols escalated to priority black. All personnel evacuate immediately. We will have our weapon whether he likes it or not.